All right, so first and foremost, before we get into this video, I'd like to first start out by apologizing for not getting this video out sooner. It was about a week and a half ago when I went on a camping trip into the backwoods of northern Georgia, having a great time with my friends and some family members, just enjoying the cold and the camping weather. And when I came back from that trip planning to make this video, I quickly realized that something was very wrong. And as it turned out, I had contracted the flu while I was out there and had been sick for the past week or so. And it was pretty rough. I mostly just stayed in my bed. I was trying to conserve my energy. I got very intimate with my bathroom and my toilet. It was not fun, but I feel that I'm ready. It's Wednesday now, and I feel that I'm ready to actually share this video with you and continue making videos every other day, and then up until 2020, and then turning into making videos every single day. And so let's get into this because the title of this video is Grammar, Gods, and Goddesses, and this is what happens when I give myself an entire week to write one of these scripts for my videos, because I just keep throwing more and more crazy things into it because I can't help myself, and then next thing you know, I've got like an hour-long video and not a whole lot of energy or time to make the video. So I'm going to do my best to work through this. I want you to understand I'm still not at 100%, but we got a lot of stuff to talk about for the next hour or so, and we have to start somewhere. So let's start by finding our bearings here and connecting ourselves to the previous Parsing Consciousness video, where we primarily talked about thought and emotion as like these fate bringers for our actions in the real world, because when you separate consciousness out into its three separate aspects, you cannot not see that these two deterministic components, thought and emotion, being in control of our actions, of our behavior in the real world. And in that video, I was also given the opportunity to introduce you guys to a little bit of myth, a little bit of religion, and I'm going to continue to do that today as well. I'm also going to introduce you to another topic that we have to start to understand, and that's grammar. And I just want to remind you guys that I'm only doing this in some videos. I'm not talking about gods and deities and myth and religion in every single video. I'm just doing it in these two videos because it's useful to better understand these aspects of consciousness, and because I find it interesting. But yeah, we're not going to be talking about this crazy stuff all the time, so I don't want to weird everybody out all at once. So in order for us to continue this idea of parsing consciousness, we have to actually bring the three aspects of consciousness back together again and understand them as one singular fundamental thing, acting together, working together, and being one thing, because ultimately they are one thing. And that is the process, the end process to parsing. You have to bring everything back together again. If it's one thing, you have to understand it as one thing. You have to bring the constituent parts back together again. And so, and it is just one thing, it's human consciousness. And so, before we get into this video, just a quick reminder of the second principle of natural law, the principle of correspondence, that states as above, so below, as within, so without. That which is occurring within the inner world of the individual is like to that which is occurring in the outer world of the individual at the collective level. And to understand these things are one and the same. I'm just bringing this up because we're bringing the constituent parts, the aspects of consciousness back together again in this video, and that's how these aspects of consciousness should be perceived. But it's actually really, really hard to talk about these, to talk about consciousness without actually separating them into the inner world and the outer world. So that's what I'm going to be doing often when I'm talking about this stuff. But I just want to remind you that that's not how this stuff should be seen. And I'm going to do this largely because two of the three aspects of consciousness can be seen as within the individual, because only the individual can bear witness to their own personal thoughts and emotions without expressing them. And the third aspect, action itself, is seen as occurring in the outer world because we can all see each other's actions with our own eyes. But we got to get really over this illusory idea of the separation between the inner world and the outer world. These are all illusions. All three aspects, whether internal or external, should be seen as one thing, and that one thing being human consciousness itself. And so when you think about consciousness, just again, don't separate them from your being. Don't separate them from your being. You are the story, okay? So don't separate it from, don't separate yourself from human consciousness. Consciousness is not a thing that you utilize. It is you. It is your being. It is your state of being. It is what you do. And so, so really what human consciousness is all about is it's all about creation. It's all about action. It's all about doing things and being things. And why is this? Well, it's because it's what we like to do as humans. It's what we like to do as humans. It's what makes us feel good. Creation is what we as beings do. It's what we do as living beings. Action, doing things, being things. Action in the real world. To create things, to become things. Creation and action ultimately are one and the same. They're the same thing. So what really helped me understand or start to gain a better understanding of this topic of consciousness and talking about this stuff was actually to start spending my time studying language itself. And I was doing this simply because, language spends most of its time trying to describe reality itself, and it does a pretty good job at doing that. And so, and it does that at the level of human consciousness. And so, with that in mind, I decided that I'm going to share with you just a little bit of this idea of language, and to show you guys how I was able to use this to come to a deeper understanding of this topic as a whole. And so, the first thing that we have to understand is that there is a deep connection between language, action, and reality, because just alone to speak words by themselves, that's an action in of itself. And also the ability to speak purpose and meaning into our reality actually plays a major role in human consciousness as a whole, because just with the use of our vocal cords alone, we're able to share more information than any other species that we know of on the face of the earth. And just think about every time you interact with a human, okay? Anytime you're interacting with a human and you understand the same language as that human, you're going to be utilizing language in order to communicate, share information, talk about your reality, talk about your day, talk about the weather, or whatever with that person. You're doing all of that through language, okay? Through words. And so ultimately, we also have to realize that language is what actually allowed humanity to unlock they basically used language as the key to unlocking the discovery of rational thought, of thinking, of reason, and of reason itself, which we'll be talking about a whole lot later on. But just for now, understand that reason is just the why behind your actions, okay? So like, why are you doing a thing? Why are you being that way? I'm asking for reasons why, so that's why it's called reason. These are logical reasons as to why you're doing a thing or being a thing, but they don't have to be logical. You just need reasons for why you're doing a thing. And you cannot come to know why you're acting the way that you're acting without the use of language, okay? So rational thought, rational thinking needs a language, and a language that can be utilized to describe reality in order to actually be utilized for our reasoning capabilities. Emotion, that aspect of consciousness, actually doesn't even need spoken word to do that. They don't need a language. Your emotions don't need a language. You just feel good. If you feel good, it's because you did something that made you feel good, and then you just feel good. You don't need words to express that stuff. If you want to know why you feel good, then you're going to need words. You're going to need language, and then that pushes you into the first aspect of conscious, rational thought, thinking, because then you're trying to figure out why you feel good, why you feel the way that you feel. And so, briefly, let's just get into, or let me just answer this question real quick. Why would we want to know the why behind our actions? Okay, so Well, ultimately, it's because the why creates purpose and meaning behind our actions. It explains why we're doing the things that we're doing. And when we can go back, if we get lost or confused as to why we're doing what we're doing, we can go back to this original purpose that has been written out or spoken of and look at it and go, oh, that's why. Okay? Because, in regards to success, you've heard of goals before, you've heard of aims, intentions, mission statements. These things are all just trying to express a purpose for why you're doing what you're doing. You need that purpose, or you won't know why you're doing the things that you're doing. So, purpose is the object towards which one strives, or for which something exists. It is the aim. It is the goal. Okay? And so knowing your purpose is very important in relation to success. And it's important because every action that you take, everything that you do in the real physical world, that costs time and energy, okay? And it just helps to have a reason why you're choosing to expend your energy, why you're choosing to expend these valuable resources, like time as well, on these actions, as opposed to expending these valuable resources on something else instead. And so I just want to look at an interesting example of a type of thing, your cells, the cells that make you up, make up your being, they have a purpose, okay? And let's just look at that real quick, because your cell's purpose is singular, okay? Each of your every 40 trillion cells, they have one singular purpose, and that purpose is to express your own unique DNA out into the physical world. And that's their intention, and they do a pretty damn good job at doing that, because that's their one true purpose. They're focused. They know what they want to do. They know why they were created, and they just do that one thing, and that's what they do for their existence here on Earth. You, on the other hand, well, you don't have just one singular purpose, okay? You're 40 trillion times more complex than just one singular cell, okay? And so with that being said, you can be all sorts of different things. And unfortunately, for example, you can be a father, you can be a cook, a chef, a chauffeur, you can be a husband, and you can be a businessman as well. You wear all sorts of hats throughout the day. Okay, you're doing all sorts of different things for different reasons why you're doing them, and it's just overwhelming for the cost, first, the expenditure issue, and then second, it becomes very hard for us to comprehend our actions and behavior if we don't know why we're doing what we're doing in these particular situations. And not knowing the why behind what you're doing or becoming is actually how we become lost and confused, unmotivated, and ultimately depressed. These are not good things. And purpose is what helps keep the depression at bay. Purpose and meaning. Okay, we're going to talk about that a whole lot. And so we find out the why through reason, through logic, through thinking critically about our behavior, and we'll talk about all this later on as well. But just for an example, walking. Okay, like you're walking down the street. It's like, well, why are you walking? Are you going somewhere? Are you just exercising? Well, it doesn't matter why you're walking. You just need a reason why you're walking, or then, you're going to get unmotivated to walk. You're going to be like, wait, why am I doing this? This doesn't make any sense. And so just understand that it doesn't matter what the reason is for doing anything, really. As you'll learn, it's really, 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 you really should have a logical and just reason as to why you're doing what you're doing. But reason doesn't even have to be logical, okay? Reason doesn't have to be just, okay? If history is any indicator as to how reason is usually used, it's usually used to justify very terrible, horrible things. And, this is actually why we're going to be talking about morality, our conscience, our feelings, and learning how to wield this tool of rationality properly before we actually utilize it in our everyday lives. Because it's no joke. This reason stuff is no joke. Once you know how to do this, you can deceive people very easily if you're willing to lie, and that's an issue. But the point is, you just need a reason as to why you're doing what you're doing, because it helps the process of doing to have and consciously know the purpose behind your actions. And so, getting back on track, let's see here. Well, before we can even get into logic, we have to come to know the building blocks of logic. And the building blocks of logic is language. We use language to study logic because logic is built out of language. So language is the communication of thoughts and emotions, the two aspects of consciousness that give birth to the third aspect of consciousness, thus creating our human reality. And it does this through a system of seemingly arbitrary signals such as voice sounds, gestures, or written symbols. I also like to look at language as language is words. Words organized in a way that creates meaning and purpose out of the chaos of the unknown. Understand that language spends most of its time trying to describe reality within the realm of human consciousness. So if we spend just a little bit of our time coming to understand language, we'll actually get a much deeper look on how our reality truly functions, because language exists simply to try to describe the reality that we find ourselves in. And so, just know that what I'm about to share, this introductory thing into language, I'm going to be parsing language into its two aspects and all that stuff. Just know that this is just a very brief introduction into a very deep and interesting topic that deserves its own foundational series in of its own. And I'm definitely going to make that foundational series later on, but I'm working on this one called Human Consciousness right now. And so we're going to continue to work through that one and get to language later on, perhaps later on in 2020. And so, parsing language. Always start with the first principles. Always start with parsing. So parsing language shows us that language has two aspects, words and grammar. A deeper understanding of words just means that it just means that you know the meaning behind the words that you're using, okay? It's all about definition. And it's just like television set, and the higher the definition, the better. So the more you understand the meaning behind the words that somebody is speaking, the better you understand words themselves. And so, ultimately, what words are, they're just placeholders for mental concepts. And we're going to talk a whole lot about mental concepts later on. But for now, mental concepts are just one thought, but not one complete thought. It's just one thought. So, tree, for example, is one thought. Okay? Hand is a concept. It's one thought. Tight shirt. That's two concepts, tight and shirt. But one concept, tree, for instance, doesn't really tell us anything at all. It literally tells us nothing. It doesn't tell us what tree you're talking about. It doesn't tell us what the tree is doing. It doesn't tell us anything. It doesn't tell me why I should be worried about the tree. Is the tree falling? Am I in danger? It doesn't say anything. You just say tree. It's as useless as any other one singular, not completed out concept. You can inflect and kind of express something a little bit deeper there. But when it comes to words alone and eliminating the idea of inflection, it doesn't tell us anything. And so the real magic when it comes to language it occurs within the second aspect of language, and that being grammar. Okay, and when I talk about grammar, people, I see their eyes, they roll very quickly, and they think that we're going to be talking about grade school grammar. That's not the kind of grammar that I'm talking about. That stuff's interesting and useful, but you can learn that stuff in like a couple hours. What I'm interested in is what is known as general grammar. Okay, general grammar is concerned with the relation of words to thoughts and emotions and to the reality itself. Okay, and so it's not your grandmother's grammar. Okay, it's very interesting. And understand that this is not understood in our society today at all, and yet it holds much more meaning to the nature of our reality, because grammar, or general grammar, is the way that we use words and the way that words are put together to try to explain just what in the heck is going on in our reality in relation to a human being, human consciousness. And so if we look at grammar, etymologically speaking, it comes from Old French, grammaire. It actually has much older history than that, but ultimately that just means grammar, or learning, really, learning, okay? And it's essentially learning, especially learning Latin and philosophy. And remember that philosophy is the study of how to be successful in whatever you want to be successful in. And grammar is fundamental to philosophy. It's fundamental, okay? And it also carries a much deeper root meaning, because our ancestors acknowledged grammar to be like magic. Because if you organize your words properly, you can actually create meaning where there was no meaning. And that appeared to be fairly magical to our ancestors of the past, and to me, it's fairly magical to me as well today. For example, I got this, pull out this dollar bill. Got this $20 bill. This $20 bill is worth $20 because, well, it says so. It spoke it into reality, okay? Is this piece of paper actually literally worth $20? Is it even worth $1? I think the answer is absolutely not. It's just a little piece of paper. But the value is $20. How did it do that? Well, it did that with language, okay? And understand also that you can strengthen your language by providing force behind that language as well. But ultimately, no one is telling me that this is worth $20. I just accept that, okay? And that, to me, is incredible. Also, the connection to magic and language it's deep, because when you're writing out words, what are you doing? You're spelling. You're casting a spell. You're writing a spell. And it's ultimately, you're making a spell when you're creating words. And incantations, really, I just started looking into this stuff. Incantations are just recitations of words that you've spelled out. So this is all that casting of spells means. And it's very interesting. Enchanting also, enchanting an object just means imbuing new meaning into that object with the use of words. You're giving that thing a new purpose when that purpose did not exist for that thing originally. And so, in the case of the $20 bill, this useless piece of paper has been enchanted into having new meaning simply by the words that are written on it, simply because it says that it's worth $20, and because trust but verify, I checked, and I can use that to buy $20 worth of something else. So I just want to make sure that my camera is set properly. So it's shoving things into its face, and it doesn't like that sometimes. And so that's more than enough magic for one day. That's what you get when I have an entire week to come up with what to write about for one video. My bad. And so incantations today are what we call, or what normal people call, sentences. Sentences comes from the Latin word sentiare, which means to think or feel, thought or emotion. Sentences are the expressions of the two aspects of consciousness that appear as existing within the mind of the individual. A sentence is a self-intelligible unit of thought. It's one complete thought. A sentence equals one complete thought, and they're made up of mental concepts. And as stated, we use words as placeholders to express these concepts. And so, in order to complete a thought, you need to express the action or the state of being of some subject. So going back to our mental concept example, tree. Okay, tree is a mental concept. What is the tree doing? What is the tree being? And so I'm just going to do a simple example of a complete thought, and that would be the tree is falling. Okay, the tree is falling is a complete thought, and therefore a sentence, because the tree is the subject, because that's what I'm talking about, and falling is the predicate, because that is the condition or the state of the tree, or because that is what the tree is doing. Okay, very simply put. So the tree is in a state of falling in this sentence. That is the reality of the situation in this example. And just like in reality, in order for a thought to complete in language, to be complete in language, you need two things. You need something to talk about, and you need something to say about the thing that you're talking about, okay? This is ultimately just the subject and the predicate. The subject's a thing, and the predicate is what the thing is doing or being. And so, the essence of the predicate is the verb. This is what I'm getting to, okay, guys? This is what I wanted to get to. The essence of the predicate is the verb. A verb from Latin, verbum, meaning word, is a part of speech that conveys the action, the doing, or the state of being of some subject. And so, verbs are ultimately the reason why I've been ranting about grammar for the last 15 minutes or so, because verbs are the words that denote creation, action, and existence itself. And they are absolutely necessary if you want to properly express anything about our reality, because while action needs thought and emotion in order to exist, what we haven't thought about is that thought and emotion also needs action in order to exist in physical reality as well. Okay, they need each other. The ability to express reality is literally predicated upon action, upon verb. It's literally predicated upon verb because they are the predicate. Thought, emotion, and action. You cannot have thought, emotion without action. Okay, they need each other. All right, and that's the completion of the triangle. There is no. These are a system of checks and balances. Okay, so neither one is better or greater or more impressive than the other. Okay, and so let's get to talking about doing and being. So human change at the level of the individual, at the level of individual action, is creation, is doing. Okay, so if you're doing an action out in reality, in relation to what is going on around you, that is you acting, that's you doing, okay, creating, changing reality. And ultimately you're changing reality so that it better fits with your human consciousness, okay? So beings, plants and animals included, are constantly changing themselves to better fit within the reality that they find themselves in. This is, survival of the fittest, okay? But more so than that, and what's most interesting about humans is that while we do have the ability to do things, okay, we have the ability to fit in the reality that we find ourselves in, we also have the ability to change our reality by doing things so that it's easier for us to fit into any environment that we find ourselves in, even in inhospitable environments like outer space, for example. And so, ultimately, this is all about survival. It's always about survival and replication, ultimately, okay? Because that's what determines who's the most successful genes, who's got the most successful genes. What is surviving? What is reproducing? That's the thing. That's the species that's winning. Okay, it's all about success, and at the most fundamental level, it's all about survival and replication. And ultimately, that's also what this action is all about, because you got to do things to survive. You got to do things. You got to eat food to survive. That's doing things. You got to do things to survive. And you got to do even more things if you want to thrive. And you got to do even more things than that if you want to succeed at whatever you want to succeed in. You got to do things, produce things, and do these things, okay? And whether you want to survive, thrive, or just exist at all, you have to act. You have to create. It's just part of the process. You got to do it. And so, and ultimately, really, the more you do it, the better it makes you feel, because this is what you want to do. This is the essence of what makes us human. This is what we love to do: create things, change things. It's invention, it's ingenuity, and it's evolution, all wrapped in one. This is a creative force that we truly, truly love and enjoy, and is truly what makes us happy. That's why making your bed in the morning makes you feel good. Cleaning things up makes you feel good. It's because you're doing things. It's better, okay? And so we can just look at a couple of these doing things just to prove that when you're doing things, it creates something. Anytime you're doing something, it creates something. So if you're walking, you're creating motion. Okay, if you're eating, you're creating, you're chewing, you're smashing the food up with your mouth. That's a creation in itself. If you're doing nothing, you're creating CO2 because you're breathing. Okay, and if you're holding your breath, your cells are always just constantly doing things. They're doing little thing after little thing after little thing, literally creating you by your actions. And in a way, this is the way that your cells doing things actually creates your state of being, which is pretty interesting. And so you have to understand that nothing that exists as it is today will be the same thing tomorrow. This includes our state of being. It's in a constant state of change and transformation. Human change at the level of the individual being is transformation or transmutation of the soul. We're all always growing. We're all always transforming and changing our state of being from moment to moment. But often the change is too gradual for us to notice. But we do go through many noticeable large-scale changes throughout our lives. We go from a fetus to a baby, baby to child, child to teenager, teenager to adult, adult to senior citizen, and we just keep transforming and changing throughout our entire lives until death does us all in. And so we, along with every living thing on earth, is constantly growing, changing, transforming, getting older, and eventually dying, all of which are actions. This is all that we do, okay? And why do we do it? It's because we like to do it. It's what we like to do, doing things, creating things, producing things. That's what's going to make us happy, okay? We're going to talk about that as well. And so, it's this action, this conscious willingness to change and transform ourselves, this wanting urge to create, to make something meaningful, to do things as opposed to not doing things, is what ultimately creates happiness for ourselves. And this happiness is directly related, directly proportional to our success in whatever success means to us, okay? And this is the reason why we're spending so much friggin' time fleshing out the verb, because every action that you take is you creating something. Every creation that you make, every action that you do, or every new state of being that you become, this is what ultimately creates happiness for ourselves, and happiness and success are synonymous with one another, okay? If there's one thing that you can take home from this hour-long video, it's that happiness and success are synonyms, and so prepare for me to argue that in later videos, because we'll talk about it, okay? So, moving on to what it means to be. Okay, so, boy, I am dizzy. In order to get ready to talk about what it means to be, let's briefly talk about the copula, which is one of my favorite words in the English language. Copula is the linchpin between the subject and the predicate in propositions, in logic, okay? So, from our example, the tree is falling. Is the copula because the is what binds the subject to the predicate, and in doing so, that actually creates our reality, okay? Because tree and falling separately, not bound together, not in relation to either each other, are just two separate mental concepts. They don't have any meaning together. But once you say the tree is falling, now you've created a reality for me to understand, for me to perceive, for me to look at, okay? And so the copula in English is the verb to be, all right? And we're going to talk a lot about to be and all of its present tense iterations, am, is, and are. But before we get into that, I just want to bring mathematics into this as well, because the mathematical equivalent of these terms, to be, is, am, are, and in the present tense, is the equal sign, okay? So it's in math, it's in the language of math as well. I just wanted to point that out. Okay, so when you have 2 plus 2, 2 plus 2 equals 4, well, 2 plus 2 is 4. That's because 2 plus 2 is 4, okay? So, getting back on track. To be is a term that has fascinated people for thousands of years, partially because to be is a verb, all right? So, what this means is that to be is a term that describes action, and this suggests a connection between action and existence, because to be is a verb that's defined as to have an objective existence or to have reality or actuality. In other words, to be is existence itself, okay? Be. And so check this out. Again, to be is a verb that means to exist. Well, truth is a noun that means that which exists. Ultimately, to be and the truth are the same thing. They're equal in meaning, which is just another definition of to be, actually. They're both a state of existence in the present moment and in the past that's subject to change in the future as the universe is defined by change itself. And so, let's get some religion and myth into this game. So, to be actually plays a huge role in many major religious traditions because of its significant association to the truth, to existence and non-existence, and to our reality as a whole, okay? And so, for a simple example, we could just look at, basic meditation practices. Just be, right? You ever hear that? Just be. Just sit down over there in your cross-legged position and try to don't do anything. Just focus on one thing. That's ultimately what meditation is all about. Don't do anything. Just be. Just sit there. Focus on your breath. Navel gaze, right? Well, when you're just being, you're not thinking, you're not feeling, you're just doing one thing over and over and over again. And this is actually, doing the one thing over and over and over again for an extended period of time is actually the ideal state for humans, okay? That's where we should be for most of our lives. We should be doing one thing as best as we possibly can, and we should be making sure that whatever that one thing is, that it's super important if we're going to spend most of our day doing it, okay? And so we have to also understand that contrary to popular beliefs, humans cannot just they're not just bad at multitasking. We can literally not multitask. It's untrue that humans can multitask. We cannot do that. Okay, we can only do one thing at a time. You can create the illusion. You can certainly create the illusion of multitasking by taking out a few projects for yourself and doing one of the projects for a few seconds or minutes, and then switching over to this project, and then switching over to this other project. And you can do that for about an hour if you really want to waste your time. And so I could prove to you that that's just not a productive way to exist. Okay, it's you should spend that hour working on one singular thing. One, you're wasting all of this time switching over, trying to figure out where you were when you left off. And second, you really get into this groove. Okay, this zone. You get into what is known as the moment when you're just working on one singular thing at a time. Okay, and so the ideal state for human beings is focusing on one thing. We're doing one thing and one thing alone to the best of your ability without feeling or thinking. You're not second guessing yourself, okay? You're not thinking about what you're going to do tomorrow or what you're going to do with your friends later on today or what you're going to have for dinner or how dare that person say that mean thing to me 20 years ago or whatever. You're not doing any of that stuff, okay? You're not thinking about anything, and you're also not having any emotions either. This is an emotionless process as well. So you're not feeling any anxiety or stress or any of those feelings that that can really take up a large chunk of your thought processes. And so, really, ultimately, all that you're just doing is you're just being one thing, all right? And we've largely been duped into believing that it's actually rare to find a moment in time where we can focus on just one thing and do that one thing, and just do that one thing alone. But this is simply not the case because we're actually all presented with this, with access to something called the present moment. All right, and during the day, once you've actually made your tasks list and you know what you have to do for the day, all you have to do is focus on one thing, and that one thing should be the present moment. What is the present moment for you? Whatever that is, just do that. Focus on that. I'm trying to do it right now as I talk. I'm always trying to do it as I'm speaking. And it makes it a challenge because people like to think that, you have to think about all of this stuff and then make a decision based on that stuff. That's really not how it should be, okay? You should already know what you want to do. You should already know what the right thing to do is and then move forward with confidence because you already have all the answers ready for you, all right? And so the point of doing this is to focus with complete attention on whatever you're doing. Focus on your senses. Focus on whoever you're talking to. Focus on the present moment, whatever that present moment is. Usually, like when you're driving, that's your senses, your eyes. Just look through your eyes. Don't turn on the radio. Don't think about how long it's going to take to get there. Just look out with your eyes and see the traffic. Watch it. Study it. Make sure you don't get into an accident because when you're focused on the present moment, your attention is completely there, all right? And the chances of you getting into an accident in that situation, very low, all right? So, obviously, okay, so, and then the point, this is actually what allows us to fall into this meditative ideal state where we're just doing one thing with total conscious absorption. And so obviously this is the point behind meditation, but meditation is largely, once you understand the process, what you have to do in order to get into this meditative state, then you don't need meditation so much anymore because any sort of process where you're doing one thing over and over and over again will allow you to get into this ideal state, this meditative state, that like being in the zone and stuff like that. Knitting, singing, writing, playing an instrument, speaking, doing the dishes, cleaning, anything really will grant you access to falling into this meditative state if you just focus on one singular thing, and you always have the present moment to fall back onto if you need something to focus on. as your meditation object. And so we're going to talk about this stuff a lot more later on, once the foundational level stuff is structured out on this channel, because this is where the stuff where stuff really starts making sense, when we start talking about the meditation stuff, getting in the zone and all that stuff. And so we're going to talk about that stuff later on, what it all means, and this will help your meditation practices and help you get into the zone much more effectively, whether for work or for sports, if for anything really. But from here, I'm going to get weird again, because I'm going to spend some time showing you a few examples of deities, of gods, in relation to the three aspects of consciousness and their very unique connections to the terms is, am, and are, which again all means to be. It's all their present tense iterations of be. Okay, and understand one. Remember, when I talk about deities and all this stuff, don't take this stuff seriously. Okay, don't think that I'm announcing this stuff and that it's fact and it's truthful and I believe in it 100% completely. I'm just looking at some odd coincidences around consciousness and around some deities and some gods, and both present and past gods, honestly. And so let's get into this by taking a look at the third person singular present of be, which is. And so be and is both mean to exist. He is funny. He exists as being funny. And so the first thing that we have to realize with is that is has a long history of existence, and a very interesting history. And so first, just from future to present to past, well, not future, but just present moment to past, just look at the word exist, okay? Exist has the word is in it already, which is interesting. And then if you look at the prefix of exist, ex, x, that's as a prefix, it means from or out of. And ist, that's just German is, okay? And if you put the definitions together in the term, then it means that the term exist defines itself as made from or made out of is to exist. And so it's created out of existence. That's what exist means when you break the word apart and look at it that way. So existence creates existence, and our state of existence originates from existence itself. We are made out of our actions, or what we are and what we do. And so I found this fascinating when someone pointed this out to me. Is also where we get the dollar sign from. In U.S. currency, the S and the line, that's an is, okay? And money, in all honesty, is the current god of the modern world, really. And if you don't believe me, well, we pray to it. Plenty of people pray for more money. We hope to have more of it in our lives. We feel lonely and we feel very negative and down when we're not making the kind of money that we need to make in order to survive. So like when we lack it, we feel depressed. And, plenty of people even offer sacrifices to Lord Money in the form of investments. And don't make it sound like I'm saying that there's anything wrong with this. I just like the similarities. And so the dollar sign represents this new god, Lord Money, because is a verb. Okay, so remember the dollar sign just means is, and that's what represents money, because is a verb. Money only exists in one realm. It exists in the physical world, okay? And therefore, taking real world action, verbing, taking action, doing things is a requirement. It is necessary in order for you to obtain money. You have to do something, unless we talk about next level money getting, which is creating value out of nothing. But we have to start with the foundations, and we'll move on from there, okay? So you got to do things to make money. Whatever that thing is, it must be something that someone is willing to value for, or to pay for, okay? To give you money for. And so, for example, time is a very valuable currency that people don't value very well. And people are more than willing to exchange their time, their very valuable time, for money. And so, for example, if I give you $20, you give me an hour of your time, where you do what I say. You work on my projects, you work on my goals, you work on my purpose, and you don't work on yours during that hour. Okay, and I just want you to think about that. Is that a worthy exchange? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. You have to think about that. And so this actually gets deeper with is, because where the dollar sign came from and where all of this stuff originates with is from the Egyptian goddess Isis, okay? Or, is. Is or Isis is the wife of Osiris, and with their son Horus, they make up the Egyptian trinity of creation that we talked about in the previous video, Parsing Consciousness Part 1. So, Isis embodies the divine feminine, represents the second aspect of consciousness, emotion, because we need emotion to take action, because action and existence itself, which are one and the same really, they both need energy. They both need energy. Existence needs energy because it takes energy to do things. And we're going to talk about physical energy as well. I sometimes forget to point out that there's different types of energy. Physical energy coming in the form of ATP from the mighty mitochondria within our bodies. I am not ignoring that exists, okay? And we're going to talk about that a lot because the mitochondria and how all that stuff works is fascinating and very interesting and useful information in order for when we start talking about health and wellness and all that stuff. But the point is that you have to exert X amount of joules of energy or whatever to do anything. And if emotion exists as the drive or the energy that gets us in motion, then emotion is one of the major progenitors of existence because existence requires energy. And so our emotions are our energy. It's one of our energy sources. And so emotion is the fuel for our action, and it does this by rewarding us when we do right action, and it punishes us when we do wrong action. This is our conscience, and we're going to talk about that a lot real soon, really, I think in the next video. And so that's enough about is. Let's move on to am, which is the first person singular present of be. I am that I am. Have you ever heard of that? I am that which I am. Well, it comes from the Bible. And Moses said unto God, Behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, The God of our fathers hath sent me unto you. And they shall say to me, What is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. Exodus 3:13 to 3:14. So this Judeo-Christian God defined himself as existence itself, as action, creation. And this God embodies the divine masculine in the Christian Trinity as the Father, in the Father, Son, Holy Spirit triangle of creation in Judeo-Christianity. So, this masculine God represents human thought, as thought guides our actions by giving us the reason why we're doing what we're doing. And we become ultimately what we think about, and we're going to talk about that much later on as well. So let's move on. I want to get through this. Getting tired and hungry. Hungry for the first time in 2 weeks, it feels like. And so, are, present, plural, indicative of be. Are, to exist. Are is and be. All the same thing, pretty much, just different perspectives. You are funny. You exist as being funny. Note, this one's the biggest stretch, okay? I was having a good time with this one, a lot of fun. And so, again, friendly reminder, don't take any of this stuff too seriously. So, I like to believe that R's deification comes from older Egyptian mythology, from before the reign of Isis, Osiris, and Horus, where the Egyptians chiefly worshipped the sun god Ra, which is actually pronounced Re or Re. I like to believe that this is where R came from. Because Re, spelled backwards, is R if you remove the E. Okay, so there's it's just an odd coincidence, and just understand. I understand that it's a stretch anyway. But in Egyptian myth, all forms of life were believed to have been created by Re. Re is actually where we get the word ray from, like sunlight, a ray of sunshine. And Re represents sunlight, warmth, growth, and change. And this makes a lot of sense when you add the idea that re is also where we get the prefix re from, re, and that's defined as again and again. Re is defined as again and again. And so creation, growth, change, undoing of the old, using the old dead detritus of the past to create newer and ever more complex creations for the future by taking massive action in the present moment, by doing all that work to take that dead detritus and form something new with it, and doing this all over again through ad infinitum, over and over and over again throughout the existence of the universe itself. And so Re is portrayed as a falcon and shared many characteristics with that of the god Horus that also represented the third aspect of consciousness, action, in the newer Egyptian Trinity myth. All right, so we hit the three aspects of consciousness, and so this thus ends the deity section of this video. I'm going to try to wrap it up really quick here. So am, are, is, and be. All these, by the way, if you're still watching, guys, I very much appreciate it. I know that this video has gotten long and confusing, and it's like, what the heck am I talking about? Well, you know, understand it's my first day back, and I'm doing the best that I can with what I got. So, in closing, we're in the home stretch here, guys. Just hang in there just for a couple more minutes. I just want to make a continuation into the next video, a conclusion that leads us to the next video, and so I'm excited to do that. So, am, are, is, and be. Okay? All these words just mean to exist, and the essence of these terms are deeply rooted in the religions of the past. They're rooted very deeply into obtaining the currency of the present, and they're fundamental in understanding the mathematics of the future. There's past, present, future utility. All of this stuff can really help you understand our reality at a very fundamental level, at the level of the being, at the level of action itself. And so it can be utilized in all walks of life very easily. And so in closing, let's just get this. So just a note, from the perspective of the person, the only difference between are, is, am, and be is our perspective, okay? So from my perspective, you are funny, okay? And from your perspective, this is me being you, I am funny, okay? And the point of me just pointing that out is that this is all the same, okay? We're one universe. We're just one thing with different perspectives, okay? And we can't forget that because this one thing that we are is existence itself. This is what connects us, okay? And these different perspectives, that's just a different way of viewing the world. It's just a different area, but we can't forget that this existence is what connects us, and ultimately that we are the universe, and all that we are doing is observing ourselves from different perspectives, and we should just never forget that each being, our own being included, has an intrinsic connection to being itself, and that this being is synonymous with truth itself and existence itself. And so, as already stated, being and the truth are one and the same. They both mean that which exists. And the truth is really all things in existence, all things in existence. And so if it's not in existence, then it is no thing, okay? And that's why a lie is untrue, because it's not what is actually in existence. It's not in relation to true objective reality, to existence itself. So, all things and beings are also that which is or exists, because as stated, the truth is that which has occurred in the past and that which is occurring in the present. And this is where it gets interesting, because your existence, your being itself, has occurred in the past, and you're also currently occurring in the present at all times. And so if you exist, if you're watching this video, then you're in existence. Wonderful. The point that I'm trying to make is that this is our connection to the truth, to existence and being. This is why you know the truth when you see it, because the truth is you and the truth is me. All right? We are the truth. We are existence, and we are that which exists. Okay? And ultimately, this is how you know the truth, because you know the truth because you are the truth. You are existence, okay? Just trying to make sure that you understand that these are synonyms that mean the same thing. And so you can ultimately tell what the truth is with the use of your conscience and with the use of your common sense, thought and emotion. Now, conscience and common sense, those two words sound oddly familiar or very similar to consciousness. You have common sense, conscience, consciousness. You know, those three words are even hard for me to say in a row, okay? And there's a reason for that, and we're going to talk about that in the next video. And in the next video, what we're really going to define is we're going to talk about our conscience in the next video, and we're going to do this by starting to focus on on emotion, on that aspect of consciousness, that second aspect of consciousness, on feeling, and we're going to work on common sense a little bit later on once we understand these this aspect of emotion and morality and our conscience, and we're going to start that in the next video now that the foundations to consciousness have been parsed and brought back together again. And so and then I made sure to rant a whole lot about all of this stuff to make it even more confusing. And so I'll try to hopefully clarify things a little bit better in the next video. So I hope to see you all there.